The sun was low when it happened, just grazing the tops of the maple trees in a quiet Atlanta suburb where the sidewalks were cracked but familiar. Marlon Hayes stood in his driveway, sweat dripping from his brow as he tugged at a rusted bike chain. Beside him, his pit bull, Shadow, lounged in the shade, ears alert, tail calm. Marlon didn't hear the sirens. He never needed to. Some part of him, long honed in Afghanistan and Iraq, always knew when something was off. He looked up, for a squad car screeched to a halt in front of his house. "Get on the ground," an officer shouted, weapon already drawn. Shadow rose and barked once. And then there was a shot. No warning. No shout to restrain the dog. Just a crack in the air. And then silence. Shadow's body collapsed beside Marlon's feet, and in that moment, time fractured. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Marlon Hayes had once led men through hell. That in Kandahar, he was called Ghost. That the brass had to beg him to come home after his third deployment. That Shadow, that dog, was his therapy, his anchor when PTSD tried to drag him under. "Sir, we had reports." Marlon wasn't listening. He was staring at Shadow's still form. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with restraint. Every cell in his body screamed respond. Every part of his training was shouting, "You're being engaged. You've lost a unit." But this wasn't the battlefield. Not officially. He knelt, ran a shaking hand down the side of Shadow's body. Warm. Still warm. He looked up. "You better call a supervisor," he said quietly. The youngest cop laughed. "You think this is a game?" Another officer nudged Marlon's back with the muzzle of his rifle. That was the last mistake they made that day. Marlon didn't move like a man, they would say later. He moved like a shadow splitting off from itself. In seconds, 2 officers were disarmed. A third had his wrist shattered before he could radio in. He didn't kill them, but he could have. Every movement was surgical, brutal, and precise. It was control incarnate. He finally stopped when he saw the neighborhood kids peeking from behind parked cars. "Get back in your homes," he said. "It's not safe." Then he sat on the sidewalk, hands open, palms bloody, waiting. Later that week, it made the local news barely. Veteran in standoff with police. No mention of the dog. No mention of the fact that the warrant they were executing was for the wrong house. No mention that Marlon had called 911 the night before to report suspicious activity and had given his name, address, and background. Social media tried to pick it up. Delta Force hero defends himself. But the algorithm didn't like nuance. Marlon never returned to that house. He sued the department, but the case was buried in red tape. They offered a quiet settlement. He refused. Instead, he used his pension to buy a plot of land in the country and opened Shadow Ranch, a sanctuary for combat veterans and rescue dogs. No loud noises, no sirens, just men like him, forgotten, trained to be weapons, learning how to heal in the company of creatures who love without judgment. What happened that day wasn't justice. It wasn't even unique. But Marlon learned something in that silence after the gunshot. You can't win a war they refuse to admit exists, but you can survive it. And survival, sometimes, is the loudest rebellion of all.